Welcome guys to the first installment of zone to zone trading system. The natural place to begin is then what are zones? Zones are areas on a chart where price has the most sensitivity. What does that mean? It means in those areas, price will either bounce or reject. In traditional technical analysis, you call these supports and resistances. Another thing to mention is larger time frame zones are always more important than smaller time frame zones. So a monthly zone or a weekly zone will have more weight to it than a zone on the hourly charts. All right. So you will get more clarity on this once we draw out some zones, but just wanted to establish the foundation there. So let's start on the weekly chart and we'll draw out some weekly zones. A weekly zone is one that has importance is a price level that has importance on a weekly chart. So let's look at some areas where price has reacted in the past. Okay. Let's start with some historical levels and then we can come closer to where price is right now. So this area looks right around 320. You can see this area acted as support once we were above it in January of 2020. Once price went below it, we had a massive down move. Then when price came back to it, it acted as resistance. Price consolidated a bit under it for a few weeks before it could break higher. Once price was above it, it acted as a support. All right. So price came back, retested it, bounced, came back, retested it, and bounced again. So this level acted as a resistance when price was below it and acted as a support when price was above it. You can see this price level, right? This price level, price seems to keep reacting there. And that's why it's a zone for us. And it's a weekly zone because it's of importance on the weekly charts. All right. If that concept is clear, let's move on to drawing out some more zones and then we can discuss how price moves between these zones. All right. So the next one looks to be of importance here. You can see price, it acted as resistance when price was below it, right? Acted as support when price was above it. And then recently price came back to retest it and then bounced. I would actually draw it out slightly higher. The reason for that being this is an area where price of influence. So one thing I need to make clear, especially on larger time frames, it's not just one exact price point that's where price will react. It's usually a range. Sometimes it's a small range, like in this around 320, it's not that big of a range. Sometimes it's a larger range, right? Like right here from 353 all the way to 360, you can say is a larger range. That whole area can be called a zone. Now, right now I'm just drawing out a price level, but you guys need to keep that in mind. And then I go into this further in the FAQs where I discuss how a zone can be a range versus an exact price level. But just wanted to clarify it here. So you can see this level right here acted as resistance when price was below it. Then once price went above it, it came back to retest this 360 area, had this major trend. Then last year came back to retest the support. This level acted as support, bounced, came back, acted as support, bounced. And now you can see why this level is important on the weekly charts. Now, one thing you guys should have noticed at this point is what we're doing is using historical price action to mark important levels. This price was defined all the way in 2020 and it was used again in 2022, right? We can mark some other levels. So for example, let's see where price bounced from in the 2020 drop. All right. So if I mark a zone here, you can see this level was of importance all the way back in 2016. I'll move it slightly. Price consolidated below this level for multiple weeks, maybe even months, right? Before it broke higher, came back, consolidated above this level for a bit, and then had this major trend. This is exactly the price. So we would have drawn this price level in 2016. Then in 2020, in this major drop, where does price bounce from? This exact level. So when we came back to this zone, this acted as a support. And as long as price was above it, the path of least resistance was higher. What do I mean by path of least resistance? I mean the path that price is most likely to take. Only when price would have broken below this level, below this zone, then we can expect price to go lower. But as long as price was above it, the path of least resistance, the path that price was most likely to take was higher. So you guys can see how we can draw levels, right now in historical levels, and that they come to play a role in the future. Same thing with where price bounced in 2018. You can see this level was of importance in 2017. February 2017, price consolidated below this level for multiple weeks. All right. Then price broke above and consolidated above this level for multiple weeks in June of 2017 before it started this major rally to end 2017. So you knew this price level was important. You would have marked it in 2017. When does it come back into importance again? In 2018. That's where this move lower in 2018 ended. Once price came back and tested this level, it held above this level. The path of least resistance was higher because this level acted as support. Only if this level would have broken, then price could have gone lower. Broken means if price had gone below it and held below it, it could have gone lower. But since price came back right above this level, as long as price was above this level, the path it was most likely to take was higher. All right. This was the entire concept of what zones are and what price is most likely to do. Now I'm going to draw out some more zones on the weekly charts, and we will discuss about the limitations of zones. One thing you should be clear by this point is we use weekly charts for larger time frame direction, right? I'm looking at direction in over multiple years. If you want to look at direction in smaller time frames, right? Like what's about to happen over the next week, for example, then we'll move to lower time frames like daily charts. For weekly charts, we are trying to figure out what's about to happen over the next few months. All right, so I marked this 454 area. You can see acted as resistance in August 2021. Once price broke above it, acted as support for multiple weeks. Once price broke below it, acted as resistance a bunch of times. And that's it. So far, price is still below it. Other level would be around here. You can see around this 416 area, 415.5. Acted as support all of June 2021. Price went higher. Then it came back, acted as support in January of 2022, March of 2022. Only when price broke below it, then it acted as resistance. And once it acted as resistance, path of least resistance for price was lower. It went lower. Price came back above it, tried to break higher, could not hold. Once it came back, acted as resistance, boom. And since then, acting as resistance multiple times. Price has been consolidating below it for multiple weeks. If it can break higher, the path of least resistance would be higher. All right, I think that should clarify the concept. I can draw out some more zones going back historically, but I think by this point, this explanation should make you realize what zones are and how we draw them out. Now, let's say we draw out those weekly zones, all right? I think we have the better picture, at least in the recent action. So we're going to move to the daily charts and make out some daily zones to see how we would use zones for an idea of what price is about to do over the next few days or weeks rather than few months. All right. So for that, we'll use more recent price action because we already have our larger time frame weekly zones in this area. So let's start to do some daily zones. Okay. Something you should be able to see right now around 390 is an important zone. I think 390 might even be a weekly zone. We can always go back and look at it. I'll draw it out right now as red. Let's say the red ones are daily zones. Okay. Why did I draw that as a zone? You can see when price was above it, acted as support, path of least resistance was higher. Once price broke below it, acted as resistance, and then only when price broke above it, acted as support, and then we went higher. Okay. Price came back to retest, acted as support, went higher. Once price broke below it, acted as resistance, we went lower, and so on. It should be pretty clear why that's a daily chart, daily zone. Let's draw out some more daily zones in the recent price action. So, because we're going to use that in the next video on how to trade based on the zones, all right? So, you can see this area. I'll draw this out. This area has acted as a zone. Obviously, price action is not the cleanest here, but you can see acted as support, acted as resistance, acted as support, boom, and there you go. This area is obviously a weekly zone, has acted as resistance. Let's see if there's a daily zone above this area. I cannot really see one. This would be a daily zone. And voila. That's about it. I don't see anything else. This would be one. If you guys still have some confusion on what zones are, feel free to ask me, but that should be pretty clear. It's a level on the chart where price has sensitivity, where price reacts to that price level, okay? Price reacts to this level. How? Acted as resistance, okay? Acted as support. Price came back. Once it held here, it went higher. Came back. Now this one again is a range. It's not an exact price level. You can see price is a bit choppy around this. And we will discuss how to make sense of that in the next video when we talk about how to trade the zones. But right now, since I'm drawing them at exact price level rather than a range, I'm just giving a basic idea. All right. But this price level, you can see price chopped around it. Once price was above, it could trend higher. Acted as resistance, acted as support, and acted as support again. Acted as support, and so on. All right, guys, that's it. You need to know in terms of knowing what zones are, how we use them to trade. We're going to discuss it in the next video. The last thing I'm going to leave with you is you would have noticed that the zones are made based on historical price action, right? We looked at previous history to see which price levels are important. How would we deal with it if we are in an area with no price history? You're right. We cannot use zones for that. For that, we can use trend lines, we can use Fibonacci extensions. There are other ways to try and figure it out. But you will realize a lot of the times when we do trade in areas with price history. So zone to zone becomes extremely important. That's it for this video. In the next video, we discuss how we'll trade these zones.